Okay. What the heck happened? I'm still reeling from a crazy week 9 in NFL action. Thanks for tuning in. This is Harvey's Huddle. I'm your host, Jackson Harvey. Last week I just sat there and watched the results pour in and thought, what the heck is going on? And as I sat there watching the Chicago Bears almost taking down the Pittsburgh Steelers, I thought, wow, if this happens, it'll go down as one of the craziest weeks ever in NFL history. It was just insane, crazy, and all the other words to describe it. Some great upsets, some really close games, and some fantastic football. It was awesome to watch. Of course, my predictions didn't do very well. I went 5-9 on the week, and that brings me to 85-51 on the season. Not too shabby, but we took a little bit of a hit, which is okay. If you haven't already, go check me out on Instagram at Harvey's Huddle. We're on Twitter at Harvey's_Huddle, and we are on Facebook as well. Harvey's Huddle is the page name. We're going to dive right into this. There's a lot of good scenarios starting to play out. The playoff pushes are getting there. But, you know, there's starting to be a solidified top 10. I was redoing my top 10 graphic, and there's not a lot of changes. And that was from like 4 weeks ago, because I haven't done a graphic lately. But I was changing it, and only really one team changed. Went out of the top 10, and one team was in the top 10. So it's starting to get more consistent. If you remember at the beginning of the season, we had a lot of flipping and flopping and trying to figure out who the top teams in the league are. And now it looks like we have an idea. And if you had told me that this was the top 10 going into week 10 of the season, I would have thought you were crazy for some of these picks. But it also makes sense, and especially the way that things have been going, it makes a lot of sense. So let's dive right in. Number 10, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. They had a gutsy win against Philadelphia on Sunday. Great rebound for this team, but not enough to really elevate them to a higher spot than number 10 right now. Number 9, I've got the Cleveland Browns. They don't need no Odell Beckham Jr., Talk about some drama going on. Talk about some just getting rid of dead weight. They went out and proved Odell who? Like, Baker Mayfield doesn't need Odell Beckham Jr. Nick Chubb doesn't need Odell Beckham Jr. to run the ball. They did great. They did a fantastic job. They looked like a new and ready to go Browns team. And honestly, they're one of my picks for being one of the scariest teams to play in the second half of the season. At number 8, I got the Green Bay Packers. Rough game. Jordan Love, of course, first start in the NFL. Wasn't too great of a start. Against the Chiefs defense, I really thought that he would be able to exploit. But you know what? It happens. Especially with your first start. I can't imagine a first start in the NFL going against the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead Stadium. So kudos to him. This Packers team needs Aaron Rodgers to survive. Of course, they can do it with Aaron Rodgers and without Devontae Adams, but you take Aaron Rodgers out, it's tough for them to do anything. And it was shown on Sunday. At number 7, I got a big fall. Big fall. I believe, let me check. They were at number 5 for me. So not a huge fall, I guess, but I got the Buffalo Bills. The Jaguars. Talk about a game. I came home from church on Sunday and I was sitting there in the passenger seat. My wife was driving and kind of checking to see how badly the Jaguars were losing to the Bills, and my goodness, they're winning. Like, I started freaking out. 9-6, and then I watched the last part of that fourth quarter, and man, that defense stifled the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL. It was insane. And I fully expect the Bills to come back and thwack whoever's in their way in the next few weeks. I think it's the Jets coming up. So Mike White starting that game. Are we going to see another upset? Maybe, but I think the Bills are going to come back with a vengeance. At number 6, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had a bye week. Nothing really to say about them. Their defense gives them a big edge against some of these teams because of the way that they handle the running game of opposing offenses. So really impressed by their running defense. Passing defense had some injuries and some issues going on, but we'll see how they look like in the second half of this season. At number 5, I've got some forgiveness, I guess. Some humility to show. And that's the thing you do when you're about to show humility. You let everyone know, I'm about to be humble a little bit right now. Just sit down. The Tennessee Titans are a good football team. I said it. They are good. They are playing good football right now. They're doing a good job. They've beaten the Bills, the Chiefs, the Rams, and someone else I can't remember right now, but they've beaten 4 pretty good teams. They've done a good job. They just beat the Colts in overtime a couple weeks ago. They have a stranglehold in the AFC South. They're a good football team, and as much as it makes me want to just keel over and die to say that, I said it. They're doing great. They're close to that. I believe they do have that number 1 seed in the AFC locked up right now. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. Do I think they're a top 5 team? No. Do I think that the Bills, or do I think that they're lower than a top 5 team? No. Do I think that they're higher than number 5? No, or else I would have put them there. Do I think that the Buffalo Bills lost their game against the Tennessee more than the Tennessee Titans won their game against Buffalo? Yes. Do I think that without Derrick Henry, the Tennessee Titans will be able to be consistent with their wins right now? No, I don't think that. But they're getting better, their defense is getting better, and they're starting to get that rising action. They're starting to get really good, and hopefully they don't peak too early. At number 4, I've got the Baltimore Ravens. And I got 3 words for you, Baltimore Ravens fans. Coach, I guess 4 words. Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year, I don't think there should be no contest for Coach of the Year. John Harbaugh. Look at what this team has had to endure. Look at what has had to take place in order for the Baltimore Ravens to be, I think they're the number 2 seed in the AFC right now. They are doing an insane job. And John Harbaugh deserves that Coach of the Year award with the hand that he's been dealt this season. Mike McCarthy couldn't do it last season with all the injuries on the Dallas Cowboys. I don't see anyone beating out John Harbaugh for Coach of the Year. The NFL recently posted a graphic. It didn't even have John Harbaugh in the conversation. And I think that is disrespectful and ridiculous. You're going to tell me the guy that just lost to the Jaguars and Sean McDermott deserves to be Coach of the Year? You're telling me Cliff Kingsbury, sure, he's having success. But in my opinion, the Arizona Cardinals and Cliff Kingsbury should win an award for Best Roster of the Year. He has the tools. All he has to do is put them together. It's the simplest thing you can buy at IKEA. It's like I don't know, nothing simple at IKEA, I guess, but you got everything made for you pretty much. It's Lego pieces at this point. And you're going to say that he's the Coach of the Year? I don't agree with that. I love the Cardinals. I think John Harbaugh deserves Coach of the Year. Lamar Jackson is playing fantastic football right now. He's throwing the ball really well. I've said that week after week after week. And they just had a super gutsy win against the Minnesota Vikings. Great job by this team. I love the Ravens here going into the second half of the season. I might get some flack for this next one. At number 3, I have the Los Angeles Rams. Now I know, the Titans just beat the Rams, but I don't care. Honestly, I don't care. I think if the Titans played the Rams the week before, Rams are going to win that game. Look at the first half of the Rams-Titans game versus the second half. And the Rams defense, I think with the addition of Von Miller, I think things got kind of out of whack there and unbalanced. And in the second half, I think they found that balance out again. And in the second half, the Titans only scored 7 points. The issue of that game was the offense. I think this game is an outlier for the offense. I think the offense, who is normally great, just had an off day and could only put up field goals and I think 1 touchdown. But I think it's an outlier, just like the number 2 team that had an awful game on Sunday as well. But hey, bad games happen. Unfortunately, it happened against the Tennessee Titans, who you could have really used a win. I guess you're not in the same conference either, so really that game doesn't matter to the Rams. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean a thing. They're not going to win the division, it looks like, anyways. They're just trying to stay afloat in the wild card race, and right now they are leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else. So I think the Rams are still the 3rd best team in the league right now. Number 2, I got the Dallas Cowboys. I think Sunday was an outlier as well. This rebound is going to be important for Dak Prescott and the rest of the Cowboys team. How are they going to be able to fare after that just awful game against the Denver Broncos? We'll see on Sunday. And at number 1, I got the Arizona Cardinals. Even without Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, this team just balled out of their mind. Dominant win without those two arguably best teams or best players on their team, and their starting running back goes down in Chase Edmonds. I said it before the season, James Conner was going to come and show that it wasn't his fault in Pittsburgh, and he's showing it this season so far. He's doing a great job, and I have the Cardinals still holding that number 1 spot. I don't know why people had the Packers last week showing that number 1 spot, but Cardinals, you got it. This is your number 1 spot to lose, in my opinion, in the second half of the season. So there you have it. We got the Chargers, Browns, Packers, Bills, Bucks, Titans, Ravens, Rams, Cowboys, Cardinals. Let me know what you think about that top 10 list, and we will head over to the previews of our 2 games. Well, actually, I just want to mention one thing. I was watching the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football, and I saw some of the most atrocious, and that's the best word I have for it, calls being made in that game. And I see now, of course, the one I want to focus on is that taunting penalty against Cassius Marsh in the 4th quarter that led to a field goal that really proved to be the difference in that game. And I see that, and I see the NFL actually defending that terrible call for a player who was looking at another bench, who was looking at the opposing team's bench, who I guess postured. I think that's the word they looked for it, or they said, and they're using for it. Postured in a way that was taunting. I don't get this at all, NFL. And I know they probably won't listen to this, and I know that it's a debate that's everywhere. And on my Twitter feed, I see everything about this terrible fit. And it wasn't just the taunting penalty, but just that game in general was just terrible officiating. And I do agree that if we saw a player hip check a referee, like the way that referee hip checked Marsh right after the supposed quote-unquote taunting, that player would have been ejected from the game. And so I don't know what happened there. I know they say it didn't have any effect on the taunting penalty, but I mean, the ref didn't throw the flag until after that contact was made. I don't know. That's me spitballing there, but there has to be something done in some possible way. And I've said it before, and lots of people have said it, and people will continue to say it. But these refs need to be held accountable. That was an extreme part of that game. That was a call that turned into 3 points for the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that was decided by a point margin of 2 points. If I'm the NFL, I'm not trying to defend that stance. I'm trying to say, hey, the officials screwed that up. I don't know why things like that is a point of emphasis in a league that has much more problems than your posture towards the opposing team's sideline. You'd think a different point of emphasis would be made. And you'd think that the NFL would want to try to get rid of these stupid penalties. Just stupid. Taunting, and the point of emphasis on the taunting is just ridiculous. Talk about nitpicking. I want to hear about your opinions. Get on my Twitter feed. Shoot me a tweet. Ask me some questions about this, or give me some comments. Give me some, do you agree with me? Do you like the way that the NFL is doing these taunting penalties? Hit me up on those social medias, Twitter, Instagram, at Harvey's Huddle, at Harvey's_Huddle on Twitter. Let me know. Let's get over to those previews. First of all, let's take a look at the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, this is a cross-conference matchup, but it's one that is quite interesting. Kirk Cousins, he went 17-28, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, and he added a touchdown on the ground in their 34-31 overtime loss to the Ravens. Right now, and I think this is interesting because the Vikings are in a position right now that the Chargers were in a lot last season. But the Vikings right now, their average point margin in losses is 3.6 points between the two teams. And that's including an outlier with 7 points in one of those losses. In their wins right now, the average point margin is 7 points. They've played in 3 overtime games. They've won 2 and they lost 1. I don't think that's right. They lost 2 and they won 1. The Vikings right now, they're struggling in those close games, a lot like the Chargers were last season. Dalvin Cook, he had 17 carries for 110 yards and 0 touchdowns. He's in the middle of some legal proceedings, and I won't really make a comment about that. I've got my opinions about the things that I've seen and the videos that have come forth from his ex-girlfriend, but we'll see how those court proceedings play out for him. Justin Jefferson, he had 3 catches on 5 targets for 69 yards and a touchdown. And a shocking stat is Adam Thielen. He had 2 catches on 7 targets, 6 yards and a touchdown. The Vikings defense this season, they're allowing 61.9% completion percentage, which is the 4th lowest in the NFL. They also have 27 sacks on the season, which is the 2nd most in the entire league. Pretty impressive. I didn't think the Vikings were that high up in the sack category. They've also allowed 1,093 rushing yards on the season, which is 27th in the league. And they're allowing opposing ball carriers 4.8 yards per rush attempt, which is 30th in the NFL. On the other hand, Justin Herbert, he went 32 with 38 for 356 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also added 5 carries on the ground for 14 yards and a touchdown in their win against Philadelphia. Austin Eckler, he had 17 carries for 59 yards, 0 touchdowns. And Keenan Allen, he had 12 catches on 13 targets for 104 yards and 0 touchdowns. The Bolts defense, they have allowed 1,576 yards through the air, which is second in the NFL. They've allowed 10 passing touchdowns, which is tied for second least in the NFL. They have only 15 sacks on the season, which is tied for 28th in the NFL. 1,293 rushing yards have been given up by the Chargers defense, which is dead last in the NFL. They also have allowed 5.0 yards per carry, which is also dead last in the NFL. And they've allowed 11 rushing touchdowns on the season, which is 29th in the league. It's pretty hard to deal with if you're the Chargers and you're welcoming the Minnesota Vikings and Dalvin Cook. Man, this is an easy one for me. Dalvin Cook, 150 plus yards, 2 plus touchdowns in this one, in my opinion. And I'm going to pick the Vikings. I'm going to say the Vikings win this one 30-20, your final score against the Los Angeles Chargers. Much needed win for the Vikings, I think, in terms of the wild card race in this second half of the season, and a big loss considering you have a huge divisional matchup coming up, and it just so happens to be our next preview. Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. This winner has an important win in the wild card race, and if the Chargers lose like I think they will, this winner of this game will be in sole possession of first place in the AFC West. Speaking of the AFC West, I'm going to just digress here. At the halfway point of the season, the AFC West has the second most combined wins in the NFL with 20. You got the Broncos, the Chiefs, the Raiders, and the Chargers, and each of them have 5 wins. The only division to have more wins than the AFC West right now, halfway through the season, well, that's the AFC North. And they have 21 wins. Pretty impressive. They've got, I think the Ravens have 6 wins, and the Steelers, Browns, and Bengals have 5 wins each. So, pretty impressive stuff. 20 wins halfway through the season in a division. That's a tough division to try to win. And there's going to be at least one team that's going to be quite disappointed. And I think it's interesting that those teams are both in the same conference, because now the second, third, and fourth place teams there, if they continue that success, there's only 3 spots for that wild card. And it could come from just those 2 divisions, most likely, if they keep up what they're doing. So it'll be interesting to see how that situation plays out with the AFC West and the AFC North trying to get the wild card spots in this final push to the playoffs. That's enough preamble. Let's take a look at the game. Derek Carr, he went 30 of 46 for 296 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions in their loss against the New York Giants. Raiders have had nothing but problems lately, and this last one after I think it was a defensive back who was threatening people on Instagram, and then you had Ruggs and his issues. I don't even want to talk about it. It's just so devastatingly depressing what happened with Ruggs. And then, of course, you had John Gruden. They've had nothing but adversity this season, with not even on the playing field, just with personal life. And it sucks. That takes the life out of a team. And you saw it in their loss against New York. They signed Deshaun Jackson. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that replaces Ruggs on the outside. But Josh Jacobs, he had 13 carries for 76 yards, 0 touchdowns on the day. The Raiders defense right now, they're allowing 6.3 yards per pass attempt, which is second lowest in the NFL. They've allowed 1,655 yards through the air, which is fifth. And other than that, everything else is pretty middle of the pack in terms of their defensive stats. On the Kansas City side of things, we've got Mahomes in his lackluster season. Kind of a slump a little bit, I guess you could call it. He went 20 of 37, 166 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. Darrell Williams, he went for 19 carries for 70 yards, 0 touchdowns. And Travis Kelce, he caught 5 of his 8 targets for 68 yards and a touchdown. And all of that was just to beat the Packers 13-7. I mean, not very impressive. Not the Kansas City Chiefs that we're used to seeing, and it is dearly missed, but it's also really annoying to see the mainstream NFL media continue to coddle. That's a great word for it. Coddle Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs offense and defense. And this Chiefs team has not been the same this season. And you need to mention that. You need to mention that Patrick Mahomes, he is on pace to throw 20 interceptions this season. His career high was his first season starting with 12. He's thrown 10 interceptions through 9 weeks. And I believe one of those weeks, it wasn't a bye. Their bye week is coming up in a few weeks, but he hasn't played well. One of the most frustrating things that we saw, or that I saw when I watched a little bit of their game on Sunday, was a screenplay going to Darrell Williams, and the line just let a guy through, I guess, and Patrick Mahomes was just backpedaling and threw the ball like 2 or 3 yards short of Williams. And the commentators, they said, oh wow, look at Patrick Mahomes' ability to get that ball off. And the running back wasn't able to make a play, but look at Patrick Mahomes being able to get that ball in the air and at least get an incomplete pass instead of a sack on a screenplay, when that's literally all he has to do. That's his only job, is to get the ball to a running back behind the line of scrimmage. It's terrible. Terrible. It's insane to see some of his decision making this season. I think maybe that Super Bowl from February is in his head. He was running for his life that game. Maybe he has some trust issues with his team now, and he's just trying to force balls where he really shouldn't be. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe psychologically or something there, but this offense is not the same. They are averaging 6.9 yards per pass attempt right now on offense, which is tied for 23rd in the league. And if it wasn't for the amount of times that they have thrown the ball, they wouldn't have 2,616 passing yards, which is third most in the NFL. Great job, but you're throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. They have 10 interceptions, which is 28th in the NFL. Shockingly, their rushing game's doing really well, though. 1,011 yards, which is 10th in the NFL. Top 10 in rushing yards. You don't hear about that very often. 4.6 yards per carry in the rushing game, which is tied for 7th. Now, those aren't bad stats. Not good stats come when you talk about their defense. 8.1 yards per pass attempt allowed, which is tied for 30th in the NFL. 16 passing touchdowns allowed, tied for 27th. They have 12 sacks, which is 31st in the NFL. They're allowing 1,096 yards on the ground, 28th in the NFL, and allowing an average of 4.7 yards per carry, 29th in the league. It's going to be an interesting game. Raiders and Chiefs both have some Chiefs more on-field issues, Raiders off-the-field issues. Patrick Mahomes, I think he's going to throw a late fourth quarter interception. You're going to see Derek Carr throw 3 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Chiefs are going to have 3 total turnovers, including that late fourth quarter interception by Mahomes. Las Vegas is going to take over the AFC West with this win. 34-30, your final score. Now, I know I went a little bit overtime here, 30 minutes longer than I usually like, but had to talk about that reffing issue, get it off my chest. I got the Vikings and the Raiders winning in my previews today. Let me know what you think. Hit me up on Instagram at Harvey's Huddle. We're on Twitter at Harvey's_Huddle. And let me hear from you. Let me hear your opinions, your thoughts, your questions. And I am quick to answer, so hit me up. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jackson Harvey. This has been Harvey's Huddle. Take care.